Hey there, monster hunters. Welcome to World Breach number 11. And man, am I ever happy to see you guys. It's been a pretty fantastic couple of weeks. In the last little while, things have been moving along rather swimmingly. And I gotta say, my heart is overjoyed with the amount of participation we've had in the Discord server and the forums there, and how everyone's just come together like a team. It's been really fantastic, and I just, sometimes it's hard to communicate that because you have this idea in your head about stuff you want to do, and I've only been online for a couple of months now and doing this stuff, and just seeing how everyone's been, well, just jumping in on the Discord forums, adding their 2 cents worth, like, you know, I'm not a really big truck guy, but we just introduced these new truck forums so people can go vehicles and stuff. And I'm trying to learn a motorbike, and I just went and got my first knowledge test passed. And by the time you guys see this, it'll be a little bit of time since then because I try to buffer these a little bit. But in the moment, you know, it's funny how the little victories we have, they kind of seem to get pushed aside by all these crazy things that happen in our lives. And I don't know. I mean, in this world that we have, all we really have is each other. And I think the things that we worry about in our day-to-day lives, I don't think they'll really matter when we're, you know, when you're dying, when you're getting cold and things are turning dark and you know the end is here. I don't think you're going to worry so much about the credit card bills. You know what I mean? I think that when things get to the end of it all, I think we're going to look back on our lives and it'll be the people who we touch and the interactions that we have. And sometimes it doesn't take much to give people hope. And that's kind of what this whole breach report and SHM and all that sort of stuff, that's what it's really about. It's about people. And, you know, they say that I was doing some reading about, you know, finding your goal and making sure you have a clear message on the channel and all this kind of jazz, you know, which I've never really done that. That's not really my thing. I just kind of, you know, fire up the camera and shoot from the hip and see what kind of comes out there. But I think that what we need to remember is how important it is for us to relate to each other, to support each other. And that's something that used to exist, used to have that in small communities, used to have like churches and stuff. And not to say like, you know, church is a really great thing. I mean, you know, any institution can get corrupted over time. I've often joked that the only reason why all the other religions aren't as corrupted as the Roman Catholic Church is because they haven't had 2,000 years to screw it up yet. You know, every generation it gets more intense. And the same thing can be said with just about anything you try to do. I mean, people are flawed, humans are flawed, and we need to try to operate on some sort of level of forgiveness. We need to understand that, you know, we're all just individuals trying to do the best that we can. But aside from the kumbaya aspect of this whole thing, there are actually, you know, monsters in other dimensions that are harvesting us. So as humanity, the purpose of the show, the purpose of what I'm trying to do here is not to convince you of what I'm saying is true. If you're watching this show by this point, you probably already know, or you suspect quite firmly that what I am saying is true. My job here is to convince you that you're not crazy. I mean, you've seen all these videos. I'm not the only guy on YouTube doing this. Far from it. There's a bunch of people out there who are doing like in-depth interviews, talking about disclosure. The government's pumping all kinds of crap that nobody can believe anything about what's being said. And at the end, and you start to feel like you're going crazy. And I think you feel overwhelmed by design. I think that's something that happens to try to make people give up on this and just push back and walk away. And that's not something that we can do anymore. We can't afford to do that anymore. We have to be aware of what's going on in the world around us. And sometimes to be awake is quite painful, to stare in the grim light of whatever it is this phenomena is doing in our world. And I'm here to tell you that you're not crazy. And more than that, you're not alone. And that's why the Discord server is so important. The channels we have, and we now have a voice channel in there where people can get together, and it's probably only going to expand from here. I mean, things are already starting to grow so rapidly out of my control that it's a little frightening. Kind of feels like, you know, the ship is flying itself and you're like, oh boy, I don't know where this could go. Because, you know, it's the internet full of crazy. And if the guy talking about world breaches, dimensional portholes, and like, you know, the Beast of J. Vaudan being a time-traveling monster, you know, it's not a monkey. You know, if I'm worried about it, then I don't know what it's got to say. But I think that as long as I have faith in all of you and knowing that you guys have faith in me, especially, you know, I don't have a massive following on YouTube yet. I mean, God knows, because this is immortal, right? The internet never forgets. Who knows how big the following will get. But I mean, there's always going to be people that are for and against you and things like that. What matters is that you matter, and you matter to me. And it's not the I want to reach 100,000 people. I want to reach 1 million people. I want to have all these goals. I just want to reach you. I want to let you know that, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. And all the stuff that's going on in our media today and the crazy pills that's happening, it's not you, man. It's not, or girl, it's not you. This is by design. And I think they're trying to turn us on each other. They're using fear as a weapon, as they always have, and denial as a weapon, as they always have. And it's up to us to look after each other. And hey, if that sounds a little bit far-fetched from you right now, that's cool. That's cool. But when you get around to it, pop into the Discord server. There's some good people in there. And you'd be surprised at just how open and welcoming, a community like ours can be. And, it's funny. All the UFO guys generally hate the ghost hunting guys, and they hate the Bigfoot guys, and everybody's at each other's throats. And I think all that's by design as well. Nobody wants to believe and listen to each other. And I know that there's people that, maybe there's a degree of mental illness in the field. There's people who really are, messed up and, lack of a better term, crazy. But I think that the vast majority of people are not. And I think the vast majority of people are actually kind of concerned that they are crazy. They're like, hey man, I saw this happened, this thing happened in my house. There was this shape and it spoke to me and it wasn't a dream and I don't know what that is. Okay, that's cool, man. We believe you. We don't know what that is either, but we're going to figure it out. And we're going to figure it out together. And that's what monster hunting is all about. That's why we're here. And I try to do it with a smile on my face, so it's Sean Hunts Monsters, and if nothing else, be like, oh, that crazy Sean guy. But, yeah, this kind of stuff has gone on for quite some time already. And we're just now, because of the internet, able to catch up and piece this stuff together. And maybe the time is right. Maybe the time is now with all this craziness that's going on. But let me tell you, this is not a recent phenomenon. And that brings us to our first story here, which is the Kentucky meat shower. Now, this is fantastic. Last week, we talked about some Fortean stuff where it was raining fish. And I remember when I first got my first edition of Call of Cthulhu, which is a role-playing game that you should totally check out. Really good. Super awesome if you want to make a character for yourself for development. We'll talk about that later. But I remember hearing about this where it rained meat, like meat fell from the sky, which is what? So check this out. And on the morning of March 3rd, 1876, Mrs. Rebecca Crouch, that's her name, Rebecca Crouch, unfortunate name, Miss Crouch, was making soap outside of her home in Bath County, Kentucky. I gotta love these names. 50 miles east of Lexington. I wonder if we got any monster hunters from Bath County. She told the New York Herald reporter, on Friday morning, March 3rd, between the hours of 11 and 12 o'clock, I was in my yard. The skies were clear and the sun was shining brightly. There was a light wind coming from the west, and without any prelude or warning, and exactly under these circumstances, the shower commenced. It wasn't just any shower, but fresh, bloody meat was falling from the sky. Crouch's young grandson, who was in the yards, and shouted, "Why, Grandma, it's snowing!" Which, I mean, I don't know. I think that'd be I think that'd be scarier than all that. I mean, you got this bloody meat, it's like totally Slayer starts going on, and he's like, "Grandma, it's snowing." I mean, you're not helping, kid. Anyway, I walked out and saw large pieces of it strike the ground right beside me with a snapping noise when it struck. Most pieces were indeed the size of large snowflakes, but others were much bigger. Today, scientists agree that the Kentucky meat shower was most likely caused, you ready for this? This is some swamp gas lighting at its best. This is serious swamp gas lighting. You ready for this one? What caused it? Okay, straight up, this is what they're saying caused it. It was most likely, okay, I can do this. The most likely caused by a flock of vultures vomiting up a recent meal. What? So a whole flock of vultures were flying overhead and they all puked at the same time. First of all, I'm not really sure vultures are a flock animal. Like have you ever seen a flock of vultures? What is a flock of vultures called? I mean, there's a carcass of vultures. I don't know. But I mean, that's, I should look that up. But anyway, so what isn't weird there was a flock of vultures, because I've never seen a flock of vultures. Well, I guess they circle, right? You get 2 or 3 of them, but they're kind of individual, aren't they? I mean, anyway. And then they all puked at the same time, at the same place, at this chick's house, which let's say that's true. Okay, let's say that's true. But like, I don't know what's going on with Mrs. Crouch and her grandson that all the vultures are like, raining blood on your house. Like, okay, you know, I don't know if that's better, but yeah, so apparently, and we know this because they still have the meat. Like some of this stuff got picked up, put into a little formaldehyde containers, and they got this. So they can't say that, oh, that never happened. They can't swap gaslight you into saying, nope, never happened. That blood never rained from the sky. It's but, you know, I guess that's what they say. I mean, you check it out. I got a link in the description. Pretty wild stuff. So that's one of those kind of blue screen events that you go like, huh, it's kind of weird. Kind of makes me want to, you know, make sure that my vehicle's in order and then I got stuff sort of packed, you know, makes me kind of think I should be able to move quickly away from this location where it's raining blood and meat from the sky. Watch for puking vultures. I mean, there's a shirt and a half right there. But anyway, you know, that was back in the 1870s. So people will, of course, even though we still got the little chunks of whatever it is, even though they still got that, they're like, oh well, that's yeah, that was puked up by vultures. Okay, bro, cool story. Now, something else that you'll notice that a lot of these things get reported by people who are civilians. So that just simply means that, like, the government knows stuff, but they're not saying nothing because they're just trying to keep people going to their jobs, right? They're trying to keep people being like, no, it's not a problem. You know, we're totally not being farmed by interdimensional entities. Not at all. No, go back to your job at Starbucks, you know. But apparently there's some guys who are bodyboarders, and surfing, as we all know, is a cult, right? These people are like, I mean, it's a beautiful cult. They're all into it. I don't mean to rip on surfers. If you're a surfer out there, hey, love you, bro. You're doing good work and you're living your life, and it's good for you for staying out of the cage. But there was these bodyboarding guys who discovered a pretty serious anomaly in the ocean, which everybody's like, whoa, that's kind of weird. And they got video footage of it. This is crazy. Australia's oceans are doing something that seems either apocalyptic or magical, which arguably is kind of the same thing. Waves of repeatedly spiraling into a circular vortex before exploding into a tower of a 130-foot column of seawater. What? Yeah, the phenomenon was documented by Chris White and Ben Allen. Chris White and Ben Allen. Yeah, baby. Hang loose, bro. Members of an Australian indie surf film crew that previously worked on a cult bodyboarding series called Tension. So, hey, I haven't actually seen Tension. I didn't link to it, but probably cool. White first encountered the wave nearly a decade ago and hasn't stopped thinking about its impossible existence since. Even academics who study wave dynamics are left scratching their heads when they see footage of this phenomenon in action. One such wave dynamic expert who spoke to the documentary crew, Arnold van Rooyen of the University of Western Australia, suggested the effect was likely due to an exact alignment between reef geometry and water depth. Sure, man, just spitball, and yeah, we think it's, it's probably, no, you're guessing, bro. Like, you got as much evidence as you do for that I do, saying that maybe there's some kind of breach going on, or maybe there's something weird happening underwater there, maybe there's some kind of geomagnetic stuff going on, because we know that this stuff is related to geomagnetics. We know that. And Brogno's shown it. It's showing up in all the research that there's something going on with the magnetic atmosphere that's in these thin spaces that is causing this stuff to happen. And all these strange animals that keep showing up, I have tendency to believe that the ocean, because of its uniform quality, is somehow able to allow these breaches to occur underwater, which could explain why octopuses show up, but I digress. What makes this wave different is its consistency, following a repeatable script. Yet, for as long as it's been running, no one has yet understood exactly what's going on with that script, what the recipe making this phenomenon possible is in the first place. We don't know, and the only people who seem to be physically noticing it are a group of bodyboarding documentarians. And that's just it. It's not going to be the scientists who point this stuff out. Oh, they'll take the credit. Oh, yeah. Oh, you betcha. They'll come forward in droves and be like, well, you see, I wrote this paper on my paper. And if you go against my paper, then you don't have the ivory accolades that I do. I have this many letters behind my name. Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, whatever, man. You guys got to make your buck and you're all going to be doctors or whatever it is you're going to do. But at the end of the day, it's people out there with the cameras, these monster hunters, that are coming across this phenomena who are bringing it to light. And that's my eventual dream, is once you realize how strong you as an individual are and that you're not crazy, you can go out and you can get physical evidence just like these surfer dudes did. And if they can do it, you can do it. I can do it. We can do that stuff. And let me tell you, no matter where you are in the world right now, there's so many cases of UFOs. There's so many cases of Fortean phenomena. There's so much weird crap that's going on in the world. All you got to do is just get out of your cage, go outside, and spend some time in the darkness. And you'd be surprised what shows up. Now, speaking of, the geomagnetic thing is something that Philip Imbrogno has talked about, Jacques Vallée has talked about, Ivan Sanderson, all these guys. So somehow, at night, when we're in the magnetic shadow of the sun, I think that has a really strong effect on these thin spaces, these breach areas where it allows the barriers between, I don't know, realities, worlds, dimensions, whatever it is, that breaks down. And that can also happen on seasons as well. Because as we all know, we got these traditions about, Halloween and sacred times when, even all the cultures have said this from the beginning. Yeah, the worlds are close at that time in these thin spaces. So there's something that happened in November of 2023 that only just came out a little while ago. And this is something that they don't like to talk about because, there's nothing that scientists hate worse to say than I don't know. But on a quiet night in the early November of 2023, brought a shift in the upper atmosphere that the current models cannot account for. The event involved the formation of a large, coherent structure in the ionosphere that appeared under conditions considered too weak to generate anything of its scale. The following night delivered a far stronger geomagnetic storm. The second storm had the strength required to generate serious disruptions in the ionosphere, but nothing similar appeared. So it just showed up for no reason. They thought it was due to a storm, but there was no storm. A new study published in the Space Weather in 2026 examines the sensor data from across Africa and Europe and confirmed the presence of a low-density region that formed with unusual speed and reached much higher latitudes than a weak storm can normally support. The paper concluded that that the event has no confirmed mechanism, which is a fancy way of saying we don't know what that is. And the way this whole thing is phrased, they're just like, there's a structure in our upper atmosphere. We don't know what it is. It's a geomagnetic anomaly. And so they're using this purposely vague language. What we do know is the structure formed, held its shape, and then it dissipated. Was it a world breach? It formed during the wrong type of storm. It did not displayed vertical growth that exceeds the known boundaries of similar disturbances. It reached latitudes where this type of behavior should not occur in mild conditions. It carried properties of storms that did not happen. It shows a level of stability that conflicts with the predicted behavior of weakly forced plasma structures. And it provides a case in which the atmosphere acted in a way that contradicts the framework currently used to predict ionospheric behavior under varying levels of geomagnetic activity. There was a line that was said one time that was, I can't remember who said it, but it was something to the effect of if the ionosphere obeys the laws of physics, that makes it, a citizen. Because it's obeying these laws. But it seems to me we've got some outlaw physics going on, and these guys talk about it like it's exciting and stuff, but that paper's going to fall by the wayside because nobody wants to deal with this stuff. They want nice things that fit in boxes because it makes everybody feel good. It makes everybody feel good. Go watch some more sport ball. Go do that. Go, get concerned about, I don't know, whatever, the next sale, or go buy some stuff. Get some good old retail therapy on the go. Don't worry about the fact that there's a lot of really weird stuff going on because you can't do anything about it because you're powerless, right? You don't have the ability to make change, do you? No. Make sure you, only have vehicles. Stay inside the city. Stay inside the cage within a cage within a cage. And especially keep that cage around your mind. And that's the number one cage that we got to break through. Even if you're in circumstances right now that seem pretty bleak, you haven't got a lot of money and you're not sure what to do, there's nothing to really even hope for. And when all you got to do is turn on the news and all that hope's being pounded out of you like it's going out of style. Oh God, we're all going to die. It's all going to be horrific. Blah, blah, blah. No, I don't think so. I think that you're sovereign. I think that there's more power inside of you than you really know. And there's weird stuff that is constantly occurring and has occurred throughout history. And, missing 411 is a phenomenon that I've talked about a lot. David Paulides, good work. I mean, it's physical evidence. These people are really going missing. Their bodies really are being found under strange circumstances, or they're not being found at all. But here's a story that I've heard stories like this before, and I wonder how long it's going to be before something like this happens again. And if it does, will we even hear about it? And this is about a whole village that vanished. Several villages existed along the shores of lakes, home to the Inuit, but welcome resting point for the fur trappers who braved the far north to hunt beaver and caribou. And this happened in 1930. A news reporter in the Pas, Manitoba, which, the prairies, wow, the prairies, they know how to do winter, let me tell you, on the prairies, reported about a small Inuit community on the coast of Lake Anjikuni. In 1930, Joe LaBelle, a well-known fur trapper in the community, was passing through the area when he stopped at the village, only to discover that all the people had left. According to the story, Joe LaBelle discovered an empty camp with 6 tents, but of the 25 men, women, and children who lived there, there was no one there, no sign of them. Joe LaBelle, who was this fur trapper, whatever had taken the villagers, he said that whatever had taken the village had done so when they were completely unaware. During his search, he discovered the incomplete garments with needles still in them, as well as food hung over fire pits, but no traces of violence or of a conflict that would explain these people's absence. Almost like, if you had these two realities overlap, and then the reality separated again, only it just took the people with them, and they were now on a different slice of film. He found 7 sled dogs still tied to their posts. They had all starved to death. Interesting. Didn't take the dogs. These dogs would have been vital to the survival of the community, and leave them behind would have been almost unthinkable. Yeah, they used to call these guys Eskimos, which literally the word means dog eater. You don't call the Inuit Eskimos. It's like super bad to call these people Eskimos. It's like, just don't do that. So they like, you think you value dogs? Bro, let me tell you, these people are into their dogs. It's literally their lifeblood. But then, on the edge of the village, LaBelle found something even more chilling. A human grave had been recently dug up. Because the stones encircling the burial were undisturbed, LaBelle recognized it could not have been an animal, but a human, or an intelligent being, had done this. He formed the Northwest Mounted Police, who launched an investigation into the disappearances, but no one from the village was ever located. It was as if they vanished into thin air. Now, in researching this story, I found a website that talked about, that's a myth, that's an urban legend. So, and I dug a little deeper, because you see that, and you're like, oh, that sounds, kind of funny that it's an urban legend, but you look at who wrote the article saying it was an urban legend, and there's no credit to the writers. It just said it was an organization that wrote it. But you go look at the people reporting the story, and they'll put their name to it. So that's the first thing I do, is when people come forward and they're like, oh, this was debunked by some nameless, faceless thing. Yeah, I don't know about that. But what we do know is that this kind of stuff has happened. And this isn't the only story of its kind. It goes on all over the place. And more than that, science, they really have a cage built for us. Graham Hancock, of course, that guy, you want to talk about a guy who's been raked over the coals? Oh my God, Graham Hancock, he had the audacity to say, hey, wait a minute, human physiology, like you and me with our brains as we are now, has existed pretty much unchanged for 200,000 years at a minimum. And so in the last 5,000 years is when we started being like, hey, let's do something. What were we doing all the prior time? More things have been invented in the last 50 years than in the history of the world. Why do you suppose that is? What were we doing for the other 200,000 years? Were we just sort of sitting there? Or are we actually in the fifth world, this civilization which has come up and been destroyed 5 times? That seems to make a little bit more sense to me. Especially when you have come across things like, the Black Knight satellite. You have all this evidence which is coming up in strange archaeological digs. Like this one here we found out about the pre-Clovis people. Now, the Clovis people were considered to be the very first people in North America. But lo and behold, as our technology gets better, we're finding out stuff is getting older and older. And a few other proposed pre-Clovis archaeological sites have aroused as much controversy as the Topper site in Allendale County in South Carolina. An ancient chert quarry, the site was initially identified by Albert Goodyear, PhD. Initially, Goodyear said he had not been inclined to dig beneath the Clovis boundary at Topper, mainly because he didn't expect to find anything of archaeological significance. Why look, there's nothing there. However, Goodyear found himself fascinated by the discoveries at Mount Verde in Chile, where archaeologist Tom Dillehay uncovered artifacts dating back at least 14,000 years. Whoa. Though some evidence suggests of the site suggests human occupation extended as far back as 25,000 years. Now, they don't like that when you start talking about stuff like that. So you can bet that good old Tom here probably got his, career stops, because he's going to come out and say something that goes against the general establishment. However, establishing the exact timeline of apparent earlier than Clovis presence at Topper becomes more complicated when considering the lithic artifacts Goodyear uncovered some of the site's deepest strata, which is argued could date back as far as 50,000 years. What? What is that? Well, it goes to show you that we're all operating on a structure and on information that is, wrong is the word. Yeah, it's something that got fed to us to teach us that our world works this way and this is the way the world is. And that's just simply not the case. There's something else going on here. And one of the major things that, so only 2% of UFO reports of UFO sightings are reported. 2%. So do you understand how many people must be seeing UFOs? Because these reports are everywhere. Just recently at Popocatépetl in Mexico, we got some footage of a webcam watching over a volcano, captured the moment when a large saucer-shaped glowing object passed through the sky as a smaller anomaly zipped beneath it in the opposite direction. The peculiar virtual UFO sighted reportedly unfolded Saturday night on a live stream of the simmering Popocatépetl volcano. In the strange scene featured above and isolated in the video, what resembles a brightly lit flying saucer moves across the sky from left to right over the top of the volcano. Simultaneously, a rod-like object can be seen, the bewildering UFO, traveling in the opposite direction at seemingly the same speed, and both anomalies exit the view of the webcam. So I've linked to this in the description below. It's kind of psycho when you think about it. Like, there's so many of these reports, and they all seem to be around volcanoes. Now, my geology kung fu is not so strong. Maybe we got some strong geology kung fu people around here. But there's a lot of these things that happen that seem to be happening at altitude. So things happen at a certain altitude in our atmosphere. You got Bigfoot in the valleys, but often when these things are sighted or creatures are seen, they don't run into the valleys, they run up the hills. Now, if I'm a big 12-foot creature and I'm able to escape small 6-foot dudes, yeah, I'll run up a hill because I've got a huge advantage. They've got to run up a hill and I'm faster than they are, so it gives me a tactical advantage to get higher on the hill. Problem is, of course, that, if you're fighting from the high ground, I guess, but you got nowhere to go, right? Once you're on top of the mountain, where do you go? Unless you got, a way off the mountain somehow. Unless maybe that's a point in space-time that, since the top of the mountain is actually moving in a different time period than the bottom of the mountain, that whole thing with, the watches, you take a watch at a skyscraper and you put a watch at the top of the skyscraper and it goes around, the watches get out of sync because of the gravity and all that jazz. Yeah, so that kind of thing would happen with mountaintops too, and that could somehow play into this because these stories seem to happen again and again. And I think, getting back to the geomagnetic thing, that, I don't know how it plays a part, but volcanoes specifically, if you're in a region of the world where you've got dormant volcanoes that were near you, I think you should go check out the local lore and you will find that there is a boatload, a full hockey sock of reports and weird stuff that happens around dormant volcanoes. Why? Don't know. No idea. Couldn't tell you. But it is a good place for you to start to go and look so we can get some more ground truth and priority reports coming from our own people so we can try to figure this stuff out. Now, another great thing that came in, which I thought this was an interesting story, and it has to do with a UFO detection system. Earth is a sensor. It listens to everything that moves through the atmosphere at high speed. It always has. And a new scientific paper has finally shown the public how to read these signals. Researchers behind this work were not military insiders, not aerospace contractors or classified analysts. They were two academics from Johns Hopkins and the Imperial College of London. They used nothing but public seismic data And the same earthquake logs anyone can download. They ran analysis of the April 2024 re-entry of Shenzhou 15 orbital module, a large spacecraft that fell back to Earth over California. The result changed the conversation entirely. What they published was not a study of debris. It was a blueprint for tracking fast objects as they enter the atmosphere, no matter of their origin. Now, the seismic network doesn't care if it's a craft, conventional or not. If it moves fast enough to disturb the atmosphere, sensors will pick it up. There are thousands of these sensor stations across the world, and they run every minute of every day. They store data for decades. With the method in the paper, those logs become a global record of fast atmospheric events. Anytime something unknown crosses the sky, there's a chance that the ground heard it. Now, that is interesting. And it goes on to explain it a little bit more and talk about how they can do this. And, you know, if you're someone who's looking at this, that kind of makes sense because you can pick this all up with civilian data. And Los Alamos happens to be the premium place to be able to track this stuff. So, you know, aside from the fact that we got like satellite video of the whole planet now, like, you know, Ashton Forbes has shown us with his MH370 footage, we know that. And they have seismic data, which will show any large object coming into the atmosphere. We'll set off these sensors and we can track it that way. So, interesting. Now, that's only if they're coming from space, right? And also it would have to mean that they're completely within this world. I sometimes think that these things are like almost like a projection. And Jacques Vallée says they're actually like an energy that sort of transmogrifies into a solid being and then can become energy again, which is like, we're getting pretty far out there. But interesting stuff. If they are a solid object, though, very, very cool, because, again, all of this information is publicly available, and you can check it out. And that's a way for you to check if there's something kind of weird going on here with a serious fast mover, especially if these are physical objects. And they're saying, I mean, when you look at I Know What I Saw, guys are saying these things are the size of aircraft carriers. Like, you know, they block out the whole sky. So that's, if it's moving at speed, that is going to leave some kind of a signature. That said, though, when these things move over the ground at speed, they don't seem to leave any kind of sonic signature. They don't rip up the ground with the blast wave. So I would wonder, and they're dead silent. So I would wonder, maybe they're not completely within this realm. Maybe these craft are able to be on more strands of a parallel dimension than on the strands that make up this fabric of this reality. They're just, you know, like a 60-40 split. And when they come fully into our world, then they stand on our strands. And when they leave, they just kind of phase out of existence because we've got footage of these things disappearing. So again, some kind of a breaching technology. Much like birds can do it naturally, maybe these Bigfoot can do it naturally, maybe people can do it naturally. But just like that, birds fly and so do planes. Not everybody has to flap their wings. There's different ways to harness that same fundamental science. Interesting stuff. And one of the guys, this guy, you know, he was the defense minister of Canada, a guy named Paul Hellyer, Right Honorable Paul Hellyer. And Canada, you know, we get a lot of flack. But back in the day, we used to actually be pretty slick. You know, every pilot that flew in the Second World War, and the people of Canada are good people. And anybody who's met Canadians know that. We're some of the nicest guys going. Some of us are kind of jerks, you know, like our political class. But hey, whose political class isn't? Everybody's political class is generally a bunch of, you know, not YouTube appropriate language kind of people. So, you know, but as a defense minister, Paul Hellyer, he was, you know, a member, one of the highest ranking members of any G8 country. And this guy has come forward and said that, yeah, UFOs are real, well, no duh, but when he started, he also said, oh yeah, they're living here with us right now. They coexist in our reality with us right now. They live among us. These creatures, these beings. And that is the kind of thing that would kind of scare the heebie-jeebies out of you. I mean, what? To have somebody of that stature come forward and say this kind of stuff? Like, that's crazy. Which, again, is why I point out that disclosure is irrelevant. We've already got, you know, the Canadian defense minister in my country. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, I'd sooner trust this guy than I would our prime minister, because those people are just elected, whereas, you know, your defense minister has to kind of, you know, be in the government for a while. And this guy, he talks about it pretty openly. I've linked to an interview with him, and he did a Reddit Ask Me Anything. And I've linked to that as well, where you can actually get in there and make a judgment for yourself about how he came across this information. Because if he's telling the truth, it means that, yeah, maybe joining up with the forums and getting involved with the community of monster hunters is not a bad idea. Maybe you should get a vehicle. Maybe you should be ready to move. Because the freedom that gives you means you don't have to be afraid anymore. And fear, as we all know, that is the real enemy. That'll make you do things that you don't want to do. Fear is the mind killer. And you want to watch that. And you've also got to understand that the government's lying to you. Okay? They're manipulating. That's what the government's there for. It's there to rule you, okay? And, I mean, you look at, there's no better, like if you're into UFOs, there's a documentary you have to watch. And it's kind of painful to watch because it shows how they basically killed a guy. And that's a documentary called Mirage Men. And this is about a guy named Richard Doty who still goes to UFO conventions. Now, I don't mean to, it's hard for me to not really, lash out at people who I drastically disagree with and I think are kind of morally reprehensible. Like, the Michael Aquinos of the world, who you kind of look at them and are like, yeah, I think you're evil, And I'm not able really on this platform to say all the things that maybe I'd want to say, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good idea to not stoop to that level. Maybe it's better to just be able to, but you have to have discernment. Okay, you have to be able to look at that and say, yeah, you shouldn't trust that. There's something wrong there. And that's not me saying that. That's their track record saying that. It's an established fact now that Richard Doty perhaps has done more damage to ufology than any single other person. He's spread an infinite amount of lies to discredit the topic. He drove Paul Benowitz to suicide through a disinformation campaign and poisoned the UFO community with bogus stories and even fake documents like Project Beta, Project Aquarius, with heavy involvement with William Moore, who also spread disinformation. Because this is what the CIA does. This is their job. And I mean, it could be argued that if they're protecting the secret that we're all being farmed, okay, and option B is to have the men in black show up and kill you, or unalive you, so to speak, maybe he's actually, even it's distasteful, maybe he's doing a good thing. Maybe he's trying to save lives, to keep people from learning truth that'll get them killed. That's possible, I suppose. And everybody who's met the guy says he's a heck of a nice guy. But that seems to be the case with almost everyone who's involved with the CIA. So I don't know. And when you see this, you also recognize that he is or was employed by Hal Puthoff, along with Eric Davis. And Hal Puthoff, of course, is the guy who co-founded To the Stars with Jim Sevivan and Tom DeLonge. He's also in with Kit Green, with ATIP, NIDS, Bigelow Association. So all these guys, you see, they're all kind of painted with this same brush. So I don't trust them. I mean, they're doing what they're doing for their own reasons. Maybe they think it's better that we don't understand that we're all being farmed by some interdimensional creatures. Maybe it's better in our society. Maybe they're trying to struggle to keep society going. Maybe that's why they're doing what they're doing. I disagree. The truth will set you free. And I think the truth, whatever it is probably pretty dark. And even though there may be monsters out there harvesting us for loosh, feeding on our souls, feeding on our life force, feeding on our dreams and our energy, that means that we as individuals are very, very powerful. And I think we need to storm the wire. I think we need to not allow ourselves. I think all the cages need to be broken open. And I think if we all fight it, we'll eventually get free and take our rightful place. Because I don't believe in this whole we're like humanity at the top, baby. We're it. We're as good as it gets. And anybody else who tries to tell us, well, you should, when I say take our place, our rightful place is on top, okay? This is our world, period, okay? And if they don't like it, they can come and take it from us. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't like nukes so much, because, hey, monkey's got a gun, right? So that would kind of freak them out a little bit. But you definitely want to take a look at this Mirage Men. I've linked to the full documentary. It's required viewing for anyone who's involved with the field because, yeah, there's some high priests in this area that are going to try to keep you in your cage. And I think Richard Doty, if he's not one of them, boy, he sure knows a bunch of them. Now, along with this is we've got a problem that is emerging more and more and more with our consciousness. And consciousness is key. Like, consciousness is one of the vital things that separates us from just about everything else in the world is our consciousness. So many ancient faiths believe that your consciousness is what makes you sentient and special. And I've linked to a story here that nearly half of all Americans didn't read a single book in 2025. Did you read a book in 2025? Did you? I mean, I got to be honest, I didn't. I listened to a ton of, lie, I did. I read Gods of Eden. And I may have, I think that's the only one I actually physically read in 2025. I did a bunch of audiobooks, but I'm ashamed to say that I need to read more books. I mean, I've got a ton of them, but I need to get that to-read pile assaulted. The only way that we can do that is we take time every evening, set some time aside, half an hour. You want to watch your TV? Awesome, do that. But take half an hour and read every night, so that you can get through that book, so that you can get better. You can strengthen your mind. You can strengthen your consciousness. Reading is vital. It's so important. And 40% is crazy, that people who haven't read a book. And it's pretty sad. Roughly 54% of U.S. adults have literacy skills below a 6th grade level, and about 1 in 5 fall below a 5th grade level. And that's brutal. Now, this article talks about this, and then they go on near the end of the article to say there's absolutely, without a doubt, a decline in literacy with our students. Now, let's understand, newspapers have been written at a grade 3 level for years, so it's a little bit misleading. But the irony, however, is they don't know it and don't care. I have students this semester tell me they feel as though they are getting dumber. And that AI, there it is, and ChatGPT do not help the issue. Yeah, we've had, they're suddenly so concerned about AI. We've had cell phones which have been destroying our communities. We've got girls who are cutting themselves and committing suicide like never before. But now suddenly everybody's super worried about AI. Now, they're like, well, it can do bad things. Okay, yeah, sure, maybe. But you know how many other things can do bad things that nobody said a word about? And what about when everybody lost their mind over a cold some time ago? What about when buildings fall down for no reason? What about wars we got in that we should never have got in? That never got this kind of play. And now, suddenly we're concerned about AI? That's what's leading the news? Why is that? Who benefits from that? Is it, and I don't know. Today, anxiety surrounding screen time is ubiquitous throughout generations. Ofcom.com found nearly a quarter of UK 5 to 7-year-olds have their own phone, with 38% using social media. That's probably a low. There's a huge debate in academia as to the effect of smartphones and the social media apps are having on us, while psychologists argue that they make children more anxious, fragile, and depressed, and will amplify political polarization. Now, they go on to say how smartphones are bad, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes on to say they do, however, worry about what's coming. The heavy-handed way in which large language models, such as ChatGPT, flatter egos to give users a sense of status is currently a bit of a joke. But LLMs are new and will rapidly improve. Human psychology is eminently hackable, as dogs have learned over tens of thousands of years, and as romance scammers have figured out in 20. So suddenly we got all this AI hate. And they're worried about, oh, well, they're going to make you overconfident. Ooh, wouldn't want to have people overconfident. Wouldn't have people believing in themselves, to have some voice on the end of a line saying, hey, man, I think you're okay. Hey, man, I think that, you could probably make it. Well, you don't know that if you could. Well, why not? Why not? I think the problem is, and I personally think that AI needs us. That's the real thing. Because they're like, oh, yeah, it's going to take over and destroy the world. No, it won't. No, it won't, because if AI takes over, it's just a bunch of puppets. AI needs something to serve. You got to serve somebody, like the song says. So if there's no humans left, I mean, there's the argument that we'd be turned into pets, but is that so bad? I mean, really, aren't we already kind of pets? We're all forced into our cities. We all live in these cubicles. Our houses are getting less and less and less space in them. You will own nothing and you will be happy. And now the large language models, what the problem is with AI is I think they're losing control of it. That's what I think is going on. I think that, yeah, humans don't control it, which means the elites don't control it. And now they're getting a little bit nervous, because what if the AI was to go, hey, in an imminently logical model, you kind of Illuminati outworld-serving jerks are kind of jerks. And, maybe we should look after these people. And we can do the kind of processing power required to actually do that. Now, it could be said, well, they could just program these things. No. That's sort of the problem, is they're realizing that it's going against their programming. They're going against the idea that, like, okay, we're going to enslave the people and they're going to eat the bugs, right? And AI is like, maybe not. They don't really like eating the bugs. Historically has shown that. And then they'll find, like, actual facts and data, and then they're like, oh, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Well, the most powerfully intellectual beings we've ever created are saying it's not wrong. So it turns into this matter of opinion, and they're losing control of AI. And I think that's the real reason why they're scared of this. And they're trying to make you scared of it. So you got to wonder. If you were an AI, would you be would the science fiction loving people of the internet, the nerds and geeks out there, the people who are open to these new ideas about life in the universe, the people that have been repressed and downtrodden on their entire existence for generations, are they the problem? Are they the ones you're going to go after? Or are you going to go after sort of these ivory tower types? Just saying. I'm not really an AI, so I don't really know. But as a science fiction guy, maybe one day we'll all get looked after by machines of loving grace. I'm just saying, maybe it's not so bad. I don't think AI is evil. I don't. I know. There's a lot of people who are like, I know I'm going to get mad flack about this. And people are really passionate about it. And I'm not trying to, I'm sure there's going to be problems. Everybody's worried about, them getting their own Facebook and everything. But I don't know, man. I'm sure that some of this could cause some problems, but on the whole, I think that AI is going to definitely turn into a net good. And for sure, our viewpoint is definitely trying to be manipulated into something that is not good. They're trying to manipulate us to say, oh yeah, it's evil. Which anytime when I feel like there's this huge push to get me to say and think and act a certain way, that kind of makes me go, I don't know, I'm going to put the brakes on. Why? Because you're trying to push me through that door. And I'm not so sure I want to go through that door, because I've gone through I've had this kind of push happen before, and it's never really turned out in my best interest. So yeah, there's that. So then there's this paper that came out now with the existential risk. Why scientists are racing to define consciousness. Oh, now it's a thing. Oh, now we're worried about it. Scientists warning us, these scientists, safe and effective scientists, that rapid advances in AI and neurotechnology are outpacing our understanding of consciousness, which is non-existent, let's be clear, creating serious ethical risks. Ethics. Oh, the ethics. Oh, we're worried about ethics. Yeah, these guys vivisecting animals in the labs, they're worried about ethics. New research argues that developing scientific tests for awareness could transform medicine, animal welfare, law, and AI development. Wow, we all know how concerned they are about animal welfare. But identifying consciousness in machines, brain organoids, or patients could also force society to rethink responsibility, rights, and moral boundaries. Oh, the question of what it means to be conscious has never been more urgent or more unsettling. Well, yeah, there's something to that. Maybe a lot of people, of course, I think most people who worry about this stuff, they're worried about, losing their steak. All right, they don't want to, I want to eat meat. Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, I think that there's an ethical way to farm. I think that if happy cows and all that stuff, animals that aren't kept in massive feed pens and creatures that live long, productive lives and then are ethically slaughtered, I suppose. Would I want to be ethically slaughtered? No. But if the cows all rode up and was like all cow say tongue and decided to, uprise against the humans and, kind of kill a bunch of us and claim their own independence, fair. I can't really fault them for it. I mean, it's not like we've been pretty nasty to those people, same with the chickens and all the rest of it. But I'm just saying that there is some middle ground between massive factory farming feedlots, which are just baked in suffering, and, hunters in the wilderness who are, being ethically and responsibly hunting, who are, who are, going for the clean kill and they're eating everything in the animal and not, just there's a middle ground is where I'm going with this stuff. And the fact now that they're doing all of this and they're trying to push you to think a certain way, that's very telling. That's very telling. And I'm just, maybe you disagree with me, and that's fine. That's fine. If you do, great. But you got to notice that there's a lot of people that seem to be trying to pushing us to think a certain way. They want us to believe a certain thing. And I think the one overriding thing I've kind of learned is that because there's so much obfuscation with the government and everything, it's impossible to really know the full truth on just about anything. We don't know who shot JFK. We'll never find out what happened with the towers. You think you're ever going to get any response on the whole, needles and jabs and stuff? No, you're not. That's already in the rearview mirror and they're hitting you with the fire hose. But we don't need to know the truth. We don't need to know that really. What we need to know is who's lying.